You're tuning in to Neurodiversity, a podcast for neurodivergent adults and the people who love them. Please note that this podcast does not substitute medical or professional diagnosis and advice. All right, it's 10:35 p.m. I really want to make cupcakes and do the dishes and put some laundry away before I go to bed. But I cannot do anything until I record this pod. Like, my brain just, won't let me. It's like, record. I don't know, I kind of have that, in my head is, the cha-cha slide. Reverse. But it didn't quite come out like that. Anyway. Welcome back to Neurodiversity. So today we're going to jump into just defining autistic burnout and really setting up the stage for me to tell the story around my experience with autistic burnout. So without further ado, we talk about burnout a lot in the culture. It's a bit of a buzzword now. No judgment on buzzwords. So we hear that a lot, and everyone can experience burnout. We can experience it in the workplace, at school, just kind of an overwhelm, an overload of responsibilities in a certain area of our life, right? And also the academic literature, which there is not a lot on autistic burnout, but shout out to people like Dora Raymaker, we are starting to get some. So Dora Raymaker and colleagues, they published this article, and the name in and of itself, I think, just says a lot. So the article's called "Having All of Your Internal Resources Exhausted Beyond Measure and Being Left with No Cleanup Crew, Defining Autistic Burnout." Woo! Well, I can relate. So let me just read you real quick the results from the abstract verbatim. It says, autistic adults describe the primary characteristics of autistic burnout as chronic exhaustion, loss of skills, and reduced tolerance to stimulus. They described burnout as happening because of life stressors that added to the cumulative load they experienced and barriers to support that created an inability to obtain relief from the load. The pressures cause expectations to outweigh abilities, resulting in autistic burnout. Autistic adults describe negative impacts on their health, capacity for independent living, and quality of life, including suicidal behavior. They also discuss a lack of empathy from neurotypical people and described acceptance in social support, time off/reduced expectations, and doing things in an autistic/unmasking way as associated with their experiences with recovering from autistic burnout. All right, so end quote. So just kind of to highlight some things there, to reiterate. So autistic burnout from this literature is being defined as chronic exhaustion, loss of skills, and reduced tolerance to stimulus. I think it's also very prevalent, or not prevalent, that's not the right word. It's important. It's important to point out that they're having to deal with these life stressors on top of already kind of disability management. So disability management about the sensory diets that they may need or might not even know they need, their capacity to take in sensory input, their capacity for maybe back and forth socialization that they might have to do in the workplace or things like that, et cetera, et cetera. All the things to manage autistic life. I don't know. I just focused it on that one point. But the point is that they have to already just manage autism on top of these increased or cumulative issues or loads that they're experiencing. And then there's this inability to access, or there's barriers to support to obtain relief. And I think that that's something that is really important to highlight around, like, it just kind of sounds like, damn, like, I'm really struggling, and then I realized I was struggling, and then I needed help, but wait, oh, no one can help me. Anyway, so, and then that the impact of that is that it has health impacts on the physical body. There's like this negative impact on capacity for independent living, just for quality of life in general, and also negative impacts on suicidal behavior or quality of life, including suicidal behavior. So that quality of life then sounds like it's tied to or in correlation with suicidal ideation or suicidal attempts, or maybe even non-suicidal self-injury. But anyway, so those are the takeaways from autistic burnout versus like, I'm burned out from work, I need a vacation, let me go to Cancun for the week and I'll be back and I'm ready to work and hang out with all my work buds. So big difference. All right, so setting up the scene though, just kind of around my life particularly. So I had no inclination of my, I had a little inclination of my own neurodivergent at this point, starting in 2020. While I did suspect, like, early in undergrad that I had ADHD, I was just kind of like, oh no, like, I don't have that, like, because I would have known, like, somebody would have told me, there's no way, like, I'm just, like, making up excuses, or, you know, yeah, not applying myself good enough, you know, the whole ADHD narrative on top of, like, what it means to be a woman in our society narrative. But anyway, so that was my only kind of inclination, but other than that, like, I had no idea, and I have a therapeutic background, even specializing in children, and I did not have, concrete bearings on what these conditions meant and, like, how they impact people's lives. I really kind of learned about it more so as a behavioral disorder, right? Versus, like, a neurological difference in someone's brain. So, yeah, I just want to set the scene there. And I think even, like, I've spent some time working in camps for, well, a camp and not multiple, a camp for kids with disabilities, whether they be neurocognitive or physical or both. I did that for a summer, and then I also, you know, spent some time working in, like, I don't know what to call them now, because I feel like in the past, I called them, like, DD homes. I don't know if that would be socially appropriate, but I'm not going to go look it up for the sake of time, but if you have an opinion about that, let me know. So, anyway, I spent some time doing that, and even, like, being close to people with autism, and ADHD, like, I never saw it in myself. It didn't click for me in the way that, like, it clicked that they had it, so I didn't think I had it. So, like, it's kind of like a level of severity type thing, like, oh, it wasn't that bad for me, or, like, so no way, right? So not understanding spectrum conditions, right? Which a lot of professionals don't. Anyway, so that's where I'm at. So 2020, I very early, the end of the first quarter of the year, because my relationship's a business, ended a long-term relationship that I have been in. So that ended. I moved out on my own for the first time in a while, because that relationship was, almost 5 years, like 4.5 years. And actually, just taking a bit of a pause, backing up a little bit, I want to say, like, this is 2020. And I want to get, like, a little conspiracy theorist about 20. I'm not going to do it, but I want to so bad. Okay, anyway, the end of the world. If you know why, you can tell me. If you don't, that's fine. You can ignore me. But beginning in 2020, or the apocalypse, I was already working as an independent contractor. So as a therapist, like, I'm a contractor. So I didn't have health insurance. I don't have like a 401k. Like, I didn't have access to those things through being employed that way. And like why I chose that anyway. I think that might make that an episode of its own, because I think that that's an important maybe like point in the story, of just late diagnosis. But anyway, and then like with the pandemic, we also had to transition to virtual. And like, this was such a new territory for therapists. Like, I mean, it's like low key my dream come true, because I was always like, dang, I wish I can travel, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, the point is, it was a lot. It was a new stuff, whatever. So I had that going on, breakup, moving on my own. And then I just like started like very ambitiously like living my best life. Like, I really wanted to like go sing karaoke, breakup songs at karaoke, and like, I don't know, wherever the night took me from there, right? Like, that was like my plan, but like I couldn't do that because of said pandemic. So anyway, like, I really leaned into like ambitiously like just living my best life, and I started my business. So I was already a therapist, but contracted to a practice that exists. I started my own practice, Therapy with Jasny. You can check me out at therapywithjasny.com. Anyway, shameless plug. And then I just like picked up a bunch of hobbies over the course of the year. Just like became a plant mom like everybody else. Got the opportunity to actually start gardening and growing crops. So then like naturally, well, maybe not naturally, but if you want to know a little bit about me, like, I want to know everything about everything, just about, unless it's just like blatant tomfoolery. Like, otherwise, like, so like I'm starting to grow, but like I need to learn how to grow. Like, how do I grow crops? So I'm like learning about all the different like soil conditions, and like, wow, how the planet's dying, and like all of our soil's dead, and how it leads to health conditions, blah 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 blah. Big digression. But like, yeah, so I'm taking in all this information about like, you know, how to garden. I'm biking, I'm socializing, social distantly or whatever. Doing a lot of stuff, home improvements, because I'm just like really out here like proving myself, like I can do this, like I can be like Barbara the Builder or like whatever. Yeah, I'm like reading, I'm writing again, I'm learning about astrology. It's a couple years too late if you ask my sister. She's very, very upset about my decision to not look into astrology until the year 2020, when she would have preferred I did that in 2017. But, you know, I like to actually give her credit for inspiring me on this journey. But anyway, of astrological journey, I mean. Yeah, so I was painting. So I was like really like diving into like my hobbies bag. And then like I really got into like tangible like activism also like during this year. So this isn't like a verbatim timeline. Some things kind of overlap and whatnot, but I did the best I could. So yeah, so like in May, like I experienced some depression, very much related to like BLM and just like the George Floyd's, the social unrest. I don't know, like, is there like an official coined term for this moment in history yet? If there is, like, also let me know about that. But like, you know, this kind of happened, whatever, and like I was just down. I was like writing depressing poetry because that's the only way I know how to be depressed. And like I eventually like I went to a rally here in Cleveland, and I just kind of I left, and I was upset. By the way, I feel like by some people's behavior, like I do feel like I'm just gonna be real, like I'm not gonna even like try to sugarcoat it. Like I do feel that like, yeah, people are there oftentimes to take pictures. Like they're there to take pictures, they're there to hold up signs, they're there to be self-righteous and be like, oh my god, like I care about this, that, or I care about this issue, whatever. So like I kind of peeped some of that. It was annoying, but I feel like what was actually very like emotionally just like earthquaking was just the fact that, like, in that moment, it felt so powerless. It felt so powerless because, you know, I'm in the middle of a very peaceful protest. While I'm not endorsing that, like, protests need to be peaceful, then I don't stand by that. But I'm in that, and then, like, yeah, there's some people, like, throwing, like, water bottles or whatever at a building or something like that, and so, like, then it just kind of escalates into tear gas and cars on fire and, like, all of this stuff. But it's just, like, you see these people here just, like, crying and, like, yelling and shouting and just saying, like, hey, like, you know, this isn't okay, this is unfair, like, we need more, we want more, we demand more, like, trying to hold, like, people in positions of power accountable. And, like, these people in positions of power, they don't care to the extent that, like, well, to lots of extents, but, like, in this particular setting, it's just, like, the reaction is disproportionate to, like, what's happening. It's so disproportionate. Not only is it, like, racist and, like, unnecessary in general, but it's also just disproportionate. So, like, if you are there to, like, to protect this building or whatever, like, people throwing water bottles at you don't need to be tear gassed. Like, that just does, like, but not when, like, you're in full, like, riot gear. Like, you're in riot gear and you've got, like, people on top of the buildings, like, talking to, like, these choppers that are flying around. Like, I'm just, like, watching, like, all these, like, very tactical things happen around me. I'm, like, there's just, like, people, just citizens, like, on the ground in, like, their fucking Converse and, like, and like a do-rag, or not a do-rag, it's not the right word, a bandana over their face, like, and, like, it's maddening, and it feels like you can't really win this way. Like, it feels, yeah, it feels like it feels stuck. At least it did to me. So, like, I was really upset about that. And also just kind of upset about some of my, like, then not partner, because we broke up, but, like, we were still cool, whatever, like, comments about it and whatnot. So, like, I just kind of had all of this, like, anger and sadness and depression that fueled me into, like, needing to do more, and, like, I really needed to get into, like, tangible, like, activism, which I've since sat with and have some different opinions on now, but, like, yeah, so, like, I started an anti-racism task force in my community, and spent a lot of time, well, not a lot, I mean, I spent time during that year working with, just, like, city officials and, other citizens in creating this task force. I also joined another community board, at the same time, which helped, to create the task force. I had, like, a falling out with my ex-partner, so we broke up, then we actually fell out, we haven't talked since, and that just took up a lot of space for me, lots of hurt, lots of things to unpack, and yeah, and then, like, I jumped into, like, my entrepreneurial bag, so I had started the business, but I didn't actually get my first client until the fall, and so I had my first client, I created my own website, so, like, again, how to research, how to do all that, what site to use, which host system to use, which one was the best, like, which one I felt like would be the best for me, did all that research, created the site, also just particular about the site, how that comes out, but I really hyper-focused through this and, like, cranked that shit out, too, and it was great, and I actually, like, really enjoyed it, and then I started to dabble in marketing and online marketing and that whole field, which is that aspect of life is a lot. And so there's so much information to take in from that. And so, like, you know, I'm starting with Instagram, but then it's like, you know, you need a base that's offline. Because, like, what if you don't want to use Instagram? Great advice. But then, like, you know, I'm trying to start email lists and, like, trying to, like, you know, then have, like, the steps, like, a great email campaign and, like, creating something to give away for free and, like, doing all of these things. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't even know about all these steps, but, like, I had this emotion and I had this deadline and I didn't really know at the time of, like, how to, like, okay, let's readjust our expectations. It was just like, no, I got to take it in. I got to do it. So, like, I was doing all of that. And then, that was kind of 2020. And, like, transitioning into 2022 or 2021, I'm sorry, like a little foreshadowing, like my caseload picked up at the end of 2020 in December is when the task force actually started meeting for the first time. So I'm now like facilitating these meetings, and both therapy and I feel like being any person in a position of power in an organizational role. I personally feel like that's a lot of energetic work. And so, yeah, like it took a lot for me to do all these things, like just researching, like really like sitting time to see like why I felt the way I did about things, or really what my opinion was. Lots of meditation, and honestly, like doing a lot of the hobbies that I was doing helped me to background process a lot of that stuff. And like, yeah, 2020 felt very much in alignment. As things picked up in 2021, that's where I feel like the burnout kind of really started. But I was feeling really good here, like in 2020, like my self-esteem was really picking up, like my sense of self-efficacy was I feel like top tier. Like I was ready to take on the world, and like I really like I had a lot going on, but it felt good, and I felt full, I felt alive, I felt calm even. And I was just really ready to like prove myself, but not to myself. I was ready to prove myself, I think, to the world, maybe also to myself, but by the world standards, right? And by like disproving things that have been said about me and like about my character. And so like I really wanted to prove that I could succeed successfully. That's redundant. That I could succeed at adulting, at like really being independent, that I could be financially stable, that I could like, you know, work my way up to like truly be like a middle class person, like and not like pretend like I am. Follow, like I could follow through on tasks, like I could actually like be tidy and like really like have my like inner idealistic like identity of like being like Aisha Curry like match up with my reality and my real self. Like I wanted to prove that, like, you know, I wanted to like, you know, just prove that I was like interesting, like prove that I was able to sustain relationships, and like I am good at relationships. Whoosh, which that was like a hard hit come 2021, boy. So like I was very much in this like period of like self-development that was like not memoir-esque, because I feel like a lot of times in memoirs like you really do get the like the nitty-gritty, but I don't know, I'm gonna work on my analogy, but like I was just like in this period of time where I was just like seeing all the positives, like all the things like we like to talk about on like the blogs about like self-care and like, you know, like getting to know yourself. It was just like, oh my god, like, you know, I love like cinnamon on top of my coffee, and like I love flowers, and like resurrection lilies are my favorite. And like that's great work, and I don't want to mock that work. I think that work was wonderful work to do, and very foundational. But I think when it comes, I know, or my opinion is, when it comes to self-awareness, you know, there's another side to that. There's going to be a polarity, and if we don't see that polarity, or you don't think there is a polarity, I think that there's a blockage or a disconnect. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave it at for today. And just setting up the stage for the burnout. All right. Peace.